Okay, so first of all, I would like to thank Tatiana and Massimo for their kind invitation to participate to this event. The topic is very much stimulating, and I will be really pleased to follow each one of the incoming presentations. What I'm going to present you today is a part of my PhD research that focused on the early Levantine amphorae exchanged during the second millennium BCE. During the Middle and the Late Bronze Age, Levantine amphorae were exchanged all around the Eastern Mediterranean for their contents. These ceramic containers attest the circulation of a wide variety of perishable goods that are today largely invisible from the archaeological records. The distribution pattern of this material, mostly found along the coast and in the major ports of the period, clearly shows the main way used to transport these vessels, through navigation. We will see during this presentation the origin of the first Levantine amphorae and how these ceramic containers evolved from the Middle to the Late Bronze Age. For this matter, we will first look at their morphological developments before considering some technological progress they underwent. At first, the Levantine amphorae, commonly labeled Canaanite jars, first appeared at the very beginning of the Middle Bronze Age, during the first decade of the second millennium BCE, at several locations in the Levant. During the first stages of the MB1, it spread rapidly outside of its original area and is henceforth found in Egypt, notably in the settlement of Tel El Daba, which has particularly close link with the Levantine coast. These amphorae were essentially used to store and transport liquid and semi-fluid commodities, such as different kinds of oils, wine, honey, tree resins, as well as cereal or fruits. The first type of Levantine amphorae we are able to identify so far has a rather archaic appearance with an oval-shaped body, a wide flared opening, a large flattened base, and two loop handles that are attached low on the shoulder. Generally, they also present a combed surface and a mark inscribed on the shoulder close to one of the handles. In a preliminary typology that is still a work in progress, this material has been classified as type 2B1. Amphorae included within this typological group clearly look similar to the previous storage jars, the combed ware, that were commonly used in the Levant during the early Bronze Age. The EB-combed jars were mostly used inside domestic context to store commodities such as oil, but some of them, especially those with handles, were also likely used for transport. Many examples of combed jars made in the Levant were imported into Egypt during the 4th to the 6th dynasties. Although their general shape and mostly their flat base was not yet properly suitable for the cargo holds of maritime ships, these ceramic vessels might already have been transported to the Egyptian kingdom by boat. During the 3rd millennium BCE, the use of such jars as a long-distance transport container actually appears to be rather opportunistic. The product, usually stored inside combed jars, may have simply been imported into Egypt in the same containers than the one commonly used and exchanged in its original area. So even if these jars were frequently transported for short and medium distance in the Levant, the vessel morphology was not yet purposely adapted for maritime transportation. From the beginning of the Middle Bronze until the end of the Late Bronze Age, the shape of the Levantine amphorae underwent a series of improvements closely related to its use, and more particularly to its mode of transport. Indeed, the logistics associated with the maritime trade seems to have imposed a number of changes in order to make these containers easier to handle and to organize in batches within the hulls of maritime ships. Broadly, the general shape evolved from an oval body to a conical morphology, passing by an ovoid and a biconical stage. The evolution is gradual and quite consistent. Despite a general shape that dominates each period, several types with different forms may have coexisted at the same time. Ovoid and biconical shaped amphora are still found at the end of the Late Bronze Age, when conical containers first appeared and prevailed. Thus, the first Levantine amphora found in the MB1 context, the type 2B1, possess an oval body and a wide base that is not perfectly flat or large enough to stand on its own, comparing with the EB comb jar from which they derived. Later on, during this period, the shape becomes rather ovoid. The handles are placed higher on the shoulder, and the base gets more and more narrow and round over time. From the MB2 period onwards, the general shape has still a curved line, but the side is significantly increasing. For instance, the capacities, which mean the quantity of commodities storable inside these containers, increase by about 40% from one period to the other, meaning that the average volume increases from 17 liters to 24 liters. At the beginning of the Late Bronze Age, during the LB1, the general morphology stays very similar to MB amphora, except few details, such as the base that is slowly detaching from the profile, or the surface of the wall that often shows a whitish self-slip. However, the body line from the neck to the base remains curved and continuous without breaking. During the first part of the LB2, in the LB2A period, the base is more frequently and more significantly detached from the transition point between the shoulder and the body gradually emerge on the profile. A slight carination may occasionally be distinguishable on some containers. Ovoid-shaped bodies are slowly replaced by biconical containers. At last, at the end of the period, the conical shape with a strong carination at the shoulder edge starts to appear. During the LB2B period, conical amphora overwhelm the exchange networks of the Levant and in the rest of the Eastern Mediterranean. The morphological development reflects various changes as well as needs that fluctuated over time. Trade organization and logistical constraints have progressively shaped amphora so that these transport containers are better adapted to their use. The evolution of the shape is therefore closely linked to the maritime trade and the intensification of exchanges in the Mediterranean. In comparison with the EB combed jars, the base of the first Levantine amphora is not perfectly flat anymore and can no longer stand upright on its own. In fact, in the MB1, the base is still large, but the center is now slightly convex. Right after, during the first stages of the Middle Bronze, the base is becoming narrower and rounder over time. This aspect demonstrates the mobile nature of these transport containers, which are no longer intended to be simply used as a storage vessel in domestic contexts. Indeed, a rounded bottom is more suitable for the curved hulls of maritime ships, but is also easier to arrange in batches and to insert between the empty spaces of a first layer of amphora. Afterwards, starting from the for the LB1 period, the base is slowly going to detach from the bottom of the vessel until it becomes, in the LB2A, a clearly distinct element of the body. During the LB2B period, the base may be either simply pointed or look like a funnel or a button toe. It becomes a highly prensible grip that is very useful when handling. The base fits ideally in the palm of the hand. And moreover, when rounded, the foot also serves as a pivot when the amphorae is manipulated on the ground. The shoulder is the feature that changed the most during the late Bronze Age. Perfectly round in the first place with ovoid-shaped amphora, it formed a continuous and regular curved line with the rest of the body. In the course of the transition phase between LB1 and LB2A, the line of the shoulder slowly became more and more detached from the profile. The transformation stages between ovoid and biconical shaped amphora is clearly visible in the ceramic assemblage of several sites from this transitional period, such as the settlements of Megiddo, Ara, or Tel Batash, for example. A clear brick is from now on visible at the transition point between the shoulder and the body, while the walls of the vessels are more and more straight and no longer convex. Most of the time, there is no obvious carination yet, but the shoulder edge is clearly distinct. When the first amphora with conical shape appear at the end of the LB2A, they present a sloping shoulder, such as the amphora on board the Ulbun shipwreck, for example. But in the course of the LB2B period, probably somewhere during Ramses II reign, the shoulder becomes completely flattened. You can see on this slide some example of ovoid biconical amphora from Megiddo and a tomb in Ara. There is a clear break in the line of the profile. The next example on the right from Ara show a biconical container with a slight carination around the shoulder and straighter walls. Again, 3 other examples from Tel Batash that come from stratum 8, which is a transitional phase between LB1 and LB2A, and stratum 7, which dates from the LB2A. We can see 3 morphological shapes that coexisted altogether. It seems to reflect a period of trial and error when potters were searching for new shapes to improve the transport containers in use by them. The conical shape that appears at the end of the LB2A results from this trial period. It is a successful innovation that becomes, at the end of the late Bronze Age, a mass-traded maritime container. We can see here some early on the left versus later on the right examples of these carinated amphora. Every aspect of these containers is perfectly suited to be manipulated on the line and to be stacked in large batches. The perfectly flattened shoulder offers an additional benefit. Indeed, the sharp carination can be grabbed by the hand, and also when the vessel is turned upside down to pour out its contents, the flat shoulder provides a great balance while handling, because it can easily, without any effort, rest on the forearm during the time of the use. Apart from the morphological development, some technological innovation can also be observed on the first Levantine amphora that have been exchanged around the Eastern Mediterranean. Since it has been realized on a corpus of complete amphora, these observations are just preliminary remarks. The complete nature of the material did not allow any detailed examination, in particular the one made by observing the walls in section. So in general, the manufacturing process has not really changed between the Middle and the Late Bronze Age. Although the shape gradually evolved over time, the forming technique seems quite consistent during all the periods. while at the end of the early Bronze Age, in the EB4 period, the ceramic production was essentially handmade on a low scale and without any rotating tool in domestic context. The manufacture of the first amphora is from now on realized in specialized workshops. Since the very beginning of the MB1 period, the amphora are made with coils and progressively regularized with the help of the rotation. During the Middle Bronze, the vessel seems to be composed of at least 3 different parts: the opening with the neck and the lip, the whole body with the shoulder and the belly, and the base. However, during the Late Bronze, the break visible on the profile at the shoulder edge indicates an additional step in the manufacturing process. The shoulder is either made separately and then reattached to the body, or realized after a short break. Notwithstanding this additional step, the coiling technique remains broadly the same during all the second millennium BCE, and the potters maintain the same technical tradition. Coils are added one after another to the ceramic placed on a rotating device, which is consistently used to regularize the vessel wall. Among the few observable changes from one period to the next, we are witnessing a change in the way the clay is prepared, but also in the global care given to the finishing. The clay used to manufacture the amphora appears coarser during the Late Bronze Age. Likewise, the finishing are not as neat as it used to be in the previous period. Whereas the Middle Bronze amphora had thin walls and were carefully smoothed and oakened, the containers now possess thicker wall and the surface is not carefully finished. Many manufacturing traces are visible on the surface. The general shape of the body may appear irregular, and the handles are often hastily attached to the body. The need to produce stronger containers in greater numbers could be the reason why potters no longer dwell on the final aesthetics of the LB amphora. Perhaps these containers became more popular as well and were no longer only intended for the palaces. In the end of the Levantine amphora evolution, which leads to the appearance of the carinated container with conical shape, the evolution clearly tends to improve their frequent use. During all the second millennium BCE, they are becoming more and more convenient to handle and to arrange in batches for the holds of maritime ships. All the morphological and technological innovation observed have resulted in transport containers that can be rapidly produced and manipulated in large numbers. The Levantine amphora of the Middle and the Late Bronze Age are early examples of mass-traded maritime containers in the Mediterranean, but only one of the first examples of a long tradition to follow, as we will see. I thank you all for your attention.